Hi, my name is Steve Bowen. I'm a technical advisor with Indo-Pacific Edelman, Indonesia's #1 public engagement firm. Thank you for taking the time to download this short video, which outlines some of the key findings of the 2009 Edelman Trust Barometer. So what is the Trust Barometer? Well, essentially the Trust Barometer is a global survey that Edelman has been undertaking for the last 10 years that examines the state of trust in countries around the world. We survey people that we call informed publics, aged 25 to 64, college educated, and in the top 25% of household income in their countries. Within this group of people, a very specific group, our margin of error for this study is plus or minus 5%. The research this year was done between November 5th and December 14th, 2008, and for the first time in the 10-year history of the Trust Barometer, Indonesia was included as an individual country within the study. The findings from the Trust Barometer as they apply to Indonesia are very interesting, and they represent very much the good news and the bad news for Indonesia. The good news for Indonesia is that informed publics generally remain optimistic about business in this country. But at the same time, there is call for increased government intervention and regulation of business. That is going to make the operating environment for companies, both domestic and international, significantly more challenging going forward unless companies take proactive steps to build relationships with the stakeholders that are affecting and driving their businesses. In terms of how you do that, our recommendations are essentially to build stronger relationships between the path forward for business in this market and indeed in other markets around the world is for companies to take more proactive steps to build stronger relationships with their stakeholders based on transparent communication. But also increasingly now we're seeing that business is expected to partner with government and with credible third parties in resolving major global issues. Let's start very quickly by taking a look at the levels of trust in different social institutions within Indonesia as compared to the rest of the world. And it's very clear from this slide that media retains very high levels of trust in Indonesia. We assign that to the fact that there is a very free press in Indonesia, and it is very widely. What this slide shows is the relative levels of trust in Indonesia and other areas of the world in key social institutions, business, NGOs, media and government. And what is immediately apparent is that media retains very high levels of trust in Indonesia. We have a very free press and a very vocal press in this country, and it is a stakeholder that businesses certainly need to pay very close attention to. Those high levels of credibility are both an advantage and a potential disadvantage for businesses who may find themselves on the wrong end of the editorial pen. Also very interesting is the relatively high levels of trust within business in Indonesia. Generally higher than most developed countries, largely due to the fact that Indonesia, as of time of recording this video, has not actually suffered the same systemic failure we've seen in other markets. But what we do see in Indonesia, in common with other markets, is an increased call for government regulation and control over business across all industries. That we interpret this is relatively straightforward as we see business in trouble around the world, as we see more and more failures of well-known brand names in Indonesia. We do see concern among stakeholders that the government should be taking preemptive actions in Indonesia to ensure that the effects of the global economic crisis are less well and less universally felt in this country. Thanks again for downloading this video segment. We hope you found it of some interest. If you would like to find out more information about the Trust Barometer, and if you want to find the specific Indonesia data, you can find it at the Indo-Pacific Edelman website at www.indopackedelman.com, and specifically the URL on this screen. Thanks again for your time.